Welcome to the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs Insider Briefing. We hold these insider briefings in order to help you, the decision makers, the professionals, our colleagues around the world, and community leaders to make more informed decisions about the Middle East's critical issues. Today, radical Islamic terrorism has created great pessimism among Israeli government and opposition leaders about the future of relations with the Palestinian leadership. General Kuperwasser, let's get this discussion started by asking, what is the major roadblock, in your view, to a Palestinian-Israeli peace deal?
Fact of the matter is that this roadblock is not something new at this juncture. It's been the same roadblock all along the way. More than 100 years of refusal of the Palestinians to accept that the Jews have any connection to this piece of land. The Jews are a people, and because of that, the Palestinians refuse today, as they did before, to accept that the Jews should have a nation state of their own in this piece of land, regardless of its size. And this is what they keep fighting again about right now. And this is why there's no peace process right now, because in the last effort to make progress in the peace process, led by Secretary Kerry and President Obama, at the end of it, the Palestinians were presented with a framework for the continuation of the negotiations, which included also a reference to the fact that Israel has to be accepted as the nation state of the Jewish people. And for the Palestinians, this was a no-go, and they refused to continue the negotiations. And this is how the negotiations came to an end.
Well, you know, in the latest, let me point to the latest spate of terrorist knifings and car rammings, which inform the type of analysis that you're offering us now, but the longer perspective in diplomacy. There are many in the West and others who say that the recent terrorism is a result of frustration over the lack of progress on the Palestinian-Israeli state file. From a national security point of view, how do you see it?
No, I don't think it's frustration. It's this wave of stabbings and driving over Israelis is a way for the Palestinians to bring their issue back to the center stage of international and regional attention, because with everything going around, there was a feeling for the Palestinians that this issue is being neglected and ignored by the rest of the international community. This was very, very well noticed when President Obama, when he was addressing the United Nations General Assembly, didn't even mention the Palestinian issue for the first time in his 7 years of being a president. And the Palestinians understood that they have to bring the issue back to the state, to the center stage. That the way to do it was back to terrorism. But they didn't want to go to extreme terrorism because they were afraid that this is going to harm them. So along with the decisions they have taken back in 2009 in the sixth Fatah conference that was held in Bethlehem, they adopted a policy that they are now implementing of two main efforts. One is what they call a popular peaceful resistance, which is terrorism without the use of firearms. And this is the stabbings and all of that. There's one effort they are involved with, and the other is an effort to build on this terror that they are perpetrating in order to promote the unilateral movement, in order to promote Palestinian national goals. And we have to remember, what are the national goals? Because this is extremely important when you understand to understand Palestinians. The main Palestinian national goal is to have all of Palestine back to the Palestinians, with stages. And the first stage.
When you say all of Palestine, do you mean the 1948, what they call the 1948 areas, which today is the state of Israel, as well as what's called the disputed territories, the post-1967 territories?
Yes, this is the Palestinian, I would say, psychological infrastructure is based on the fact that being a Palestinian, from a point of view of identity, means that you are committed to returning to all of Palestine eventually. And it's an ongoing struggle. Being a Palestinian means that you participate in the ongoing struggle in order to regain all of Palestine. And behind it, there's a deep understanding that the Jews don't have the right to have a state of their own in this piece of land, and any piece of it. And that's why the Palestinians, led by Abu Mazen, refuse again and again to accept that Israel is a nation state of the Jewish people.
Give us a sense, Mr. Inbari. Let's pick up from what General Kuperwasser is saying. In the internal Palestinian discourse, are you seeing this type of incitement, frankly, that results in terrorism? Are you seeing the tensions between the Hamas and the Fatah as well, which also plays into this type of internal turmoil on the Palestinian side? We don't generally hear that in the larger mainstream discourse in the media and others. So help us understand, as someone who's in Ramallah 4 or 5 days a week, as opposed to being in your own home in Israel.
Well, I would like to say that Hamas, in general, accepted the idea of popular Intifada, but only for one purpose: to steal the idea from Fatah. In addition to it, Hamas continues to use arms to make terrorism and to kill by fire. So the dispute now between Fatah and Hamas is about how to achieve our goals. In principle, Hamas is rejecting the notions of Fatah that it is better to achieve our goals through the popular Intifada. Hamas is using popular Intifada, but only not to let Fatah to lead the popular Intifada. Up on the popular Intifada, Hamas is also using firearms in order to stress the point that Palestine will be liberated through jihad.
And when you say Palestine, again, I think for our viewing audience, it's very important to make this distinction. They mean from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, where today Israel exists as a nation state.
I would say even more than that. Now Fatah, while we are in the background of the Arab storm, when we see the Caliphate movement on the one hand and the Pan-Arab movement on the other hand struggling in Syria, Hamas is being dragged into the Pan-Islam notions. Hamas is part of the Nusra in Syria. So Hamas is a Caliphate movement now. So for Hamas, Palestine from the sea to the river is only a station. For Hamas, Palestinian statehood, it's not important. It's not an issue at all. Hamas is now part of the larger caliphate idea.
So if that's true, General Kuperwasser, if Hamas is part of the larger radical Islamic caliphate idea, does that mean if Israel were to withdraw, theoretically, all the way back to the pre-1967 lines, as the international community demands, and divide its capital city, Jerusalem, as many in the international community are pressuring Israel, would the conflict continue?
Not because of Hamas, but also because of Fatah. The conflict will continue because the conflict is, as I said before, the goals of the conflict is to re-establish Palestinian sovereignty, or that's the way they do it, they say it, although there was never any Palestinian sovereignty anywhere. But this is what they ask, to establish Palestinian sovereignty over all of Palestine. And that's the purpose of the Palestinians, including Fatah. It's not only Hamas. The context in which Pinhas is referring to the Hamas involvement in what's happening around us can be attributed to Fatah as well, because in the Palestinian society you cannot really separate between religious considerations and the national considerations. They are mixed. They are mixed in Hamas, they are mixed in Fatah as well. So when, for example, you see a Palestinian child go and stab an Israeli, and then if he, unfortunately, he gets killed during this event, so when they bury him, you see both Fatah and Hamas issue all kinds of declarations commemorating the hero that just committed a heroic action, both from a national and a religious point of view. And they would use all kinds of sentences from the Quran, to justify what is done, and not only a national reasoning behind it. So this is all one building, that is one construction that is made of both national and religious elements
and Islamic themes.
And we have to remember in this respect that it's mainly from the point of view of Hamas, but even more radical organizations within the Palestinian political sphere, but also from Fatah. The fight against Jewish presence in Palestine is a part of the fight against what they consider to be the West, Western culture. And the fight against Western culture is the major element standing behind Daesh and all these extremely radical organizations in the region and in the Islamic world in general. So while Daesh and others, Al-Qaeda, fight against Western influence, and so in Iran, by the way, fight against against Western influence in the region, they leave the Palestinian-Israeli conflict to the Palestinians to do their job by pushing out what they consider to be Western influence, which is the Jews, in this area. This is the job of the Palestinians. And in this respect, the conflict between us and the Palestinians is just one marginal issue in the wider context of fighting against Western influence in the Middle East.
There's something that many in the West don't know, and that is the tension between the Jordanians and the Palestinians over the future of the Muslim holy places in Jerusalem. What is the effect of the bloody competition between Jordan and the Palestinian Authority over control and management of the Muslim holy sites in Jerusalem?
The Palestinians are perceiving the Aqsa Mosque as the diamond in of the Palestinian state. Without Al-Aqsa, there is no Palestinian state, as far as they are concerned. For Jordan, it is a matter of legitimacy of the Hashemite crown. They are the guardians of the holy sites. So it is either they or the Hashemites. And now there is ongoing struggle. It is not on the surface. It is behind the table, but it is very strong. Everyone who knows a little bit about what is going on in East Jerusalem knows that one of the major conflicts are between the Palestinian Authority, the PLO, and Jordan.
So at the end of the day, even if Israel were to withdraw from what's called the internationally known West Bank, we call in Israel, Judea and Samaria, withdraw from part of Jerusalem, withdraw from, even people are demanding the Golan Heights, withdraw from all these areas, the conflict wouldn't be solved, not because Israel didn't withdraw, but because Jordan won't withdraw from its control over Muslim holy sites, General.
That's really a minor issue. That's true, but it's a minor issue. The reason it's not going to be solved, it's what the Palestinians call the basic concepts of being a Palestinian. That's in Arabic, al-thawabit, the unchanging elements of our beliefs. That is the reason that it's not going to be solved. And these are made of, I would say, 5 elements. And they are all about the fight between the Palestinians and Zionism, the way they oppose Zionism. That's a thawabit, the basic elements. And first, there's no Jewish people. That's the first thing that the Palestinians have to believe, that there's no Jewish people. That's why Jews don't have a right for self-determination. Secondly, there's no connection between the Jews and this piece of land. It's all invented. When Palestinians talk about the temple, the Jewish temple in Jerusalem, they say Beit al-Maqdis al-Maz'um, the alleged temple. There's no such temple. The third element says that Jews are extremely dangerous creatures and that nobody wants to live next to them. And because of that, there's no reason why the Palestinians should be living in a place where the Jews are. They should expel the Jews from this place because it's unacceptable that you will live with Jews. That's why when you speak about a Palestinian state in the future, it should be without Jews, Judenrein. And the fourth element, and which is the most important one, is that every Palestinian is identified by, as I said before, by his commitment to the struggle against Zionism. Struggle can have all kinds of ways. Even negotiations is a kind of struggle. Even planting a tree is a kind of struggle. Of course, carrying out all kinds of terror attacks, it's even a better kind of struggle. It's an ongoing struggle. And this ongoing struggle will continue after Israel is going to withdraw from all these territories of course it's going to continue because the commitment is going to be there.
So give us...
And let me just say the fifth element, and this is the nature of the Palestinians. By definition, they are victims. You cannot imagine that the Palestinians are not going to be victims. That's why, by the way, they kicked out Salam Fayyad, who challenged the notion that the Palestinians have to always remain victims, which means they will never be responsible, never accountable to anything they're doing. So he challenged that issue. This was enough for the Palestinians to kick him out. These are the 5 elements, and these thawabit are transformed into the commitment to get hold of all of Palestine. This is as they call it, the wa'ad, the promise, the commitment that they have to themselves to liberate all of Palestine, to get control of all of Palestine. That's why they talk about the right of return to their homes, not general return, but the right of the Palestinians to return to their homes. And that's another element of this.
When you say their homes, we're talking about cities like Jaffa and
Acre
and
Tiberia.
all throughout what today is the state of Israel.
Everything. That's extremely important to understand it.
A final word from both of you. This has been I would say, a tough and a little bit cloudy conversation about the constraints and the difficulties, all from the point of view of Arab, Islamic, and Palestinian culture, political culture, and others. Leave us on a positive note. What is a pathway to progress in whatever way you can leave us with that pathway to progress between Israelis and Palestinians as we move forward? Because as you gentlemen know, there has been cooperation between the communities, some local political cooperation over the years. What is your sense, Mr. Inbari? What is a pathway to progress between Israel and the Palestinian Authority, or Israelis and Palestinians?
The situation is really very difficult, especially now when we have the background of the Arab Storm around us. And I cannot find any positive words in the current situation, because I hope that the Palestinians will take some lesson of what is going on in Syria, and at least in this stormy period to stay quiet and to enjoy the relative stability that they have here. But instead, they are insisting to join the Syrian situation, which is amazing. So I'm very much disappointed. I really hope the Palestinians will take a distance from Syria, from Libya, from Egypt, from all what is around us. But instead, they decided to be part of Syria, which is very much disappointing.
When you say part of Syria, you mean part of the chaotic Islamic struggle.
Exactly, as if they are envy why in Syria they are in destruction and we are prosperous. It's a sense that amazes me.
Amazing to Mr. Inbari. What about you, General Kuperwasser? You're known for your rationalism and your practical assessment. Give us some pathway to progress on the basis of perhaps conflict management, joint cooperation on some level.
I think there are several ways to inject into this picture some positive views. First of all, I think that one positive thing that can happen is that there's much greater awareness around the world. And you mentioned before Chancellor Merkel point that time is not ripe for making an agreement right now. And the reason is that more and more world leaders understand what is going on inside the Palestinian community. It's not frustration. It is the hope that they will be able to kick the Jews out of it that drives them. And knowing that, there's, in my mind, going to be a greater pressure on the Palestinians to change the way they inculcate these messages in the minds of their children, because people see now what is the immediate outcome of inculcating these kind of messages in the minds of young Palestinian children. The stabbings, all of that is a direct result of the long years of growing these children with these kind of convictions. And so people understand that this has to change. And the moment the West is going to tell the Palestinians, and they are doing it, Secretary Kerry just told Abu Mazen 2 days ago that it should stop this incitement. And the moment the world leaders are going to tell the Palestinians, stop the incitement, otherwise, and they have to say it together with some sort of a big stick, otherwise you're going to lose money. Then there's a chance that the Palestinians will have to reconsider the kind of messages they send to their children, and this may, in the long run, bring out some positive elements. Second, I think that in the end of the day, the Palestinians always want to, on the one hand, stay committed to their basic convictions, but at the same time, they want to have a good life. And we also want them to have a good life, but if this ongoing refusal to have negotiations, this ongoing commitment to terrorism is going to make them feel that they cannot have a good life because our security needs will require us to take all kinds of steps that would, in the end, make their life not as good as they want, then they will reconsider. This is exactly the way the first and the second Intifada came to an end. And because at a certain point, the contradiction between those two things bring the Palestinians to reconsideration of their cost effectiveness of what they're doing. And in my mind, this is a positive element. And the third one, which is most important, is that the region is going through such a huge change. And in this change, the pragmatic elements in the Middle East understand that the Palestinian issue is not the most important issue. And if they want to have cooperation with Israel, and they want to have cooperation with Israel, then they will have to put some pressure on the Palestinians to enable Israel and the Palestinians move forward back along the negotiations route. And if this is going to be the case, then we might make progress. We have to understand that this is exactly what the Palestinians are worried about. The Palestinians are worried that what we see here in the region exposes the fact that the basic pillar of their efforts to promote Palestinian national goals, which was their ability to claim that the problems in the relations between the West and the Middle East is the Palestinian issue, and that's why if you want to have better relations with the Islamic world and with the Arabs, you have to go along the Palestinian lines in order to promote peace in the Middle East. Now everybody understands that this was not true.
The premises have changed.
The premises have changed, and this may weaken the Palestinian position and force them to rejoin negotiations sometime in the future, if the West is going to be wise enough in order to use it, and if the pragmatic Arab states are going to be wise enough in order to use it, in order to bring the Palestinians back to the table.
Here we have a ray of light at the end of a dark tunnel in the Middle East, and the real ups and downs of Palestinian-Israeli diplomacy. I'd like to thank both of you gentlemen, JCPA scholars, Pinhas Inbari, Brigadier General Yossi Kuperwasser. So as we can see, difficulties and opportunities on the Israeli-Palestinian track. Intransigence, yes, but always a possibility to get things going, notwithstanding the very serious security problems that Israel faces and the issue of incitement. Those have to be taken care of, but what we've tried to do here is to give you some context and perspective on this very intractable, seemingly intractable problem that we will continue to discuss as we move forward. Thank you so much for joining us on Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs Insider Briefing. We'll see you again soon.